And while we're waiting for the chairs and the furniture to be moved around and for my formidable panel to join me on stage, I'd love to say it's great to be here once again in Brussels in person. I was here last year and it was wonderful to finally be let out after our harrowing experience with COVID. So once again, it's lovely to be here with you in person. For those of you joining us remotely, welcome. And we've got a phenomenal session lined up. And I think the ambassador has touched upon a lot of issues that we'll be picking up with as well. If I could invite my formidable panel on set. And we've got a couple of guests also joining us remotely, because let's face it, in the days of Zoom and COVID and Microsoft Teams and Google Meets and whatever else, we'd be lost without it. So let's have that. Hello, welcome. Welcome to all of you. So, as Andrew was saying, we are talking about the future of women, propelling the full potential of women. And I'm going to put this to my panel in a moment, but I just wonder, can we talk about the future of women without having a man on the panel? That's one for the organisers for a little bit later. But without further ado, we know that much of emerging Europe has a real strong tradition, a history of empowering women. But we also know that the trend, well, it's not a regional trend, because we're seeing a resurgence in traditional family values, which threatens some of the gains that have been made. And we'll dissect all of this in a moment. But let me first of all introduce my brilliant panel. First of all, the ladies not in the room, let's make them feel welcome. IVANA GAŽIČ is the Chief Executive Officer of the Zagreb Stock Exchange. We're also joined by Diana Kiguradze, from the Regional Manager of the Caucasus for Visa. Also joining us, MARTA DIAVOLOVA, the Deputy Regional Director of the UN Population Fund. Welcome. Also, we have MONIKA from the Vox Feminae Foundation. Welcome to you. And Magdalena Janda, Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of UVERA. And I hope I'm getting that right. Perfect, because it's a fascinating subject. Right, straight away, Marta, no pressure. One of the points the ambassador made was the role of, well, women, how women seem to be the front line when it comes to conflict. Now, I know that the UN Population Fund, the UN we've recently been talking about the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence. We're seeing in Ukraine what is happening to women on the ground. I've witnessed for myself, when I was reporting for the BBC, the amount of women coming across the border with their children, taking action, moving their families out of war zones. A weaker sex, are we always doomed to be the victims when it comes to conflict?
Regretfully, yes. I have to mention that women in conflict, women very often are victims of gender-based violence outside the conflict, but during conflict situation, the situation exacerbates, and in very many instances, this has been used as a weapon. So in this regard, we see a lot of mobilization. I think the ambassador already mentioned the resilience of the society in Ukraine, of mobilizing to stand against the invasion, but also women themselves being on the move, and now being a large number of refugees, practically the largest movement in Europe after the Second World War, being exposed to women on the move are always at risk, not only on gender-based violence, but also of misconduct and lack of support and support systems, being away from their families, from their networks. So in this sense, the solidarity of the countries surrounding Ukraine, providing services, support and understanding, psychosocial support on the ground. So UNFPA in Ukraine, also in the countries around Ukraine, Moldova, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, we have on-the-ground teams and work through the NGOs to provide the necessary psychosocial support and services to transition this period for women's life. It's not easy for the organizations being overstretched with the demand, but it's equally hard for the women themselves who are on the move, and a lot of burden is on their shoulders through this period of time.
And it's huge burden, as we've been witnessing, absolutely monumental burden. And one of the aspects that the ambassador was, again, I want to touch upon this with IVANA, just so brace yourself, IVANA, but the ambassador was talking about increasing the number of women within the armed forces, and she mentioned best talent. So I'm going to talk about the subject of quotas, which I know a lot of people find is that the right way of increasing the number of women within organizations. But she was talking about the increasing the number of women in the armed forces, and arguably, how do you do that if not by quotas? Ivana, Chief Executive Officer, Zagreb Stock Exchange, arguably an incredibly male-dominated world. Is it something, are quotas, does that work for you? Is that something that you would agree with? Or is it an artificial way of increasing the number of women in such a male-dominated workplace?
Good afternoon to everybody. So what I wanted to say is that, in my opinion, since I'm in this industry for almost 22 years now, and being CEO for 12 years, at the beginning of my career, I thought quotas were a bit insulting towards women and men as well, because they were kind of pushing somebody through the system without any real grounds. However, since the situation in the world I work in and participate in, it's not only economics, it's politics and everything else, didn't go forward. It actually went backward, in my opinion, in last 10 years. I think quotas are inevitable. They will enable women to get the training, to get the right way forward, to take the positions they are really able and more than competent to hold. The countries that have implemented quotas have actually created much better environment for the women, and women have proven that they are fully competent to excel in any business they are doing. It is very sad to see that over 60%, around 62% of the college graduates in Europe are female, while the management is still very largely underrepresented by females in Europe. And this is something we need to change. I mean, majority of the decisions for purchases, for running families, running offices and so on is made by women, and most decisions are made by men. And this is basically creating a big gap between the understanding of the two sides of the society. This is why I started to be a very strong advocate for quotas recently, in the last 5 years, let's say.
Ivana, it's really good of you to be so honest about it, because quotas, I know, it'll be fascinating to find out what the audience thinks as well, but quotas, I know, are quite an emotive subject. Monika, is a women, when it comes to fulfilling their full potential, and I'm bringing you in specifically on this because your organization, Vox Feminae Foundation, it's a non-governmental organization, and what it does is it creates these projects to enable women to succeed professionally, publicly, but with a family. And for me, I can't see that working. I know that I've got kids, and kids or no kids, whatever, I just don't have enough time in the day. And those little people take up an awful lot of time. And I feel that because of that, my career possibly isn't where I would have liked it to be. You can't have it both ways.
Well, actually, I would say you can, but I would add one thing about quotas, if I may. According to me, quotas are very efficient in political life, because then we are sure that Parliament reflects the population it represents. So in political life, quotas are really efficient. But in business, I would say that quotas might be counterproductive. And I know that this is something in opposite what was just said. But well, I believe that business-led solution would be better for long-lasting change. Legislative quotas may be counterproductive for women. Well, we will see, as it was said, what others think about it, because this subject is very interesting. But coming from quotas, coming to equal opportunity, because this is actually what our foundation is working on. We introduced this program, which is called Fair to Women, and it's for medium and large organizations, and all organizations who want to be in this program, they have to fulfill such a questionnaire where they introduce their ideas and policies and projects that they do for women to be able to combine those two worlds, that is professional and private. We believe that equal opportunities, truly equal opportunities, will empower women in working environment, and they will be able to succeed and go.
Just to jump in there, can you ever have truly equal opportunities if most of the childcare is your responsibility as a woman?
Well, we are working on it, but the truth is that it needs time. And as it was said, in some countries, quotas were introduced and they were successful, but those countries were prepared and parenthood was divided equally between fathers and mothers. In Poland right now, as you said, most of family life is women's responsibility. But if we are working on this, we will succeed. It will come, but not in a year. Legislative quotas are easy, but I'm in favor of a business-based approach.
A business-based approach. Okay, we need some facts and figures. Diana, that's where you're coming in. Visa has done conducted research among entrepreneurs. She's next, empowered by Visa. So what did you find? Are women genuinely being empowered, or is this just lip service?
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Tbilisi, Georgia. It's a great honor to be joining you today and sharing the panel with incredible, strong and inspiring women. And apologies for not being able to physically visit Brussels for this amazing event. We need to confess that sometimes women in Georgia tend to be really busy from time to time. So yes, you are absolutely correct. At Visa, we empower female entrepreneurs, and this is our business imperative. And we support their growth, success, and we're committed to providing women-owned small businesses with tools, resources, insights, and networking opportunities that can help them grow their business. And as part of our ongoing commitment to championing female entrepreneurs, Visa has launched a global initiative to support women business owners as they build, as they sustain, and even advance their businesses. And this is called She's Next, empowered by Visa, and we call it a project with human touch. And in Georgia, we have conducted 2 waves of the program, and in the nearest future, we're starting the 3rd wave. And before we started the program, of course, we did the research in order to identify the factors that were challenges for women entrepreneurs, what were the difficulties they faced, how COVID-19 affected their business. And what we revealed was that 50% of women said that they encountered difficulty obtaining the funding and they needed to start their business. So fundraising remains main challenge faced by women entrepreneurs that start their business. 54% of female entrepreneurs responded that running a business compared to the previous year has become harder, and that what the impact of COVID-19 and the difficulty faced during the pandemic for the respondents was that they had to close the outlets partially or completely. And respectively, so there were a lot of other findings, but what I want to say is that we try to address with the programs that we do in order to support women entrepreneurs from Visa perspective, obviously. So we try to address the needs and we try to make them and help them adopt to new realities, whether it's pandemic, whether it's anything else. So we try to help them to shift to digital.
Okay, so let's put that to an entrepreneur, to a businesswoman who's set up a really unique company, Uvera, which is about safety against sun protection, but also safety for the environment. That's a lot of stuff to combine. A beauty product as well, arguably, because, you know, skin protection, etc. But Magdalena, so you're hearing Diane there talking about fundraising being an issue. What, as a co-founder of such a company, what would have been helpful as a woman going into this kind of industry? You're also, I've got to say, biochemist, a PhD as well, phenomenal achievements. But when it comes to running a business like that, what, say for Visa, what would have been helpful?
Thank you. Actually, I'm like a bit a border between what has been said by Ivana and Monika, that the quotas and that kind of the division, it's also of help, but in case of the business, the competence is the major stuff and the major driver for bringing the innovations out. And in our company, we have the equal amount of the men and women, and it's not done by our policy, but it's done by the competences. So if somebody is applying for that position, we are considering only the experience, and we are taking this into account. Me personally, myself, when I was leading my previous company, because Uvera is the second startup, when I was leading the previous one, I had sometimes the situation when I felt so offended by the table when I was sitting alone only with the men, that I sometimes felt like the ornament. And it happened to me one situation in London when I was talking with the investment fund about investing in the company who was developing the new drug candidates. And I went with my PC, opening at a PC, and I was starting the presentation, and the guys looked like me. It's like, huh? We are thinking that you're the assistant, that you're not the CEO. And it was so offensive at the beginning that they dared to tell it, that I was like, okay, so let's change the word. And the presentation went really well. They were willing to invest, but from some different reasons, it was not possible. So I will not go into details. But it's happening to women, that kind of the wording and even is said. And we need to play with it. And why we as the women are not playing like this with the men. And this is because of our education and the growing up. And I think to change that way of thinking, we need to start the change at the really basic level, at the education, to start to learn the kids not to respect women, because they already know that the women needs to go first through the doors. But the critical thinking.
I'm going to absolutely be devil's advocate here, but then that puts the pressure on me to, are you suggesting that I'm raising my sons badly because I'm, you know, where's the pressure point? Whose responsibility is it? Society, the banks to equally pay women? Do you see what I mean? It's like, so that's another thing that I have to do as well as wash the socks and clean the floors?
We are living in a really, really interesting, you know, times. And I'm reading, I got two daughters, and I'm reading them every night when I'm at home. I'm reading them, for example, the stories of the different girls who did different kind of the rebellions. I mean, like they were, you know, like the Maria Curie-Skłodowska, what he has done, and the others who were in different times, but they had the courage to do this kind of the interventions and interruptions. But I would prefer to read also about the men and the women at the same time, not about I don't want to, you know, to push them to be all the time fighting. I would like to make it equal. And I think that this should start also by the education at the really basic level. But coming back to our talk and also about the C-level, the quotas at the C-level as the CTO, CEO should be kept, no matter whether the experience is like this or that, because taking the women at this position, we are giving them experience to lead the company, to lead the teams, to develop new stuff. And as we have, for example, let's say, equal system at the basic level, at the equal at the top, then in the middle we will find also the solutions. Because like what I can see in the big pharma companies with whom I'm talking, or the big cosmetic brands, it's usually at the C level, there is the gender equal rights, and let's say they're like both women and men. But when it's going down, like the C-1 level, they're only men.
It's frozen pipe.
Yeah.
It also depends where you're looking at.
All right. Well, okay, Marta, you're going to regret saying this. So we're hearing. So Magdalena, thank you, and I'm sorry just to be devil's advocate here, but we heard Monika speak about how in Parliament it's good to have quotas, but in business not. I'll be honest with you. With the UN, it's meant to represent the global community, the international community. Do you have quotas?
We don't, but we work against the gender parity. So
what does that mean?
What that means? So as soon as the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, assumed the role and responsibilities as Secretary General, he committed to this and set it as a goal for the UN system. And I think this is very strong message from the leadership. So irrespectively of the organization, you need to have in place this very strong commitment that parity is important, to have the diversity present in the room at all levels of the organization. And you're right. I remember times, I'm 25 years with UN, I remember times usually women are the low-level staff, clerks, assistants, and now I'm very delighted to see that this diversity throughout the ladder of the career opportunities is much more diversified. In this regard, quota is healthy, and it's part of the international agreements and convention to eliminate discrimination against women, because quota eliminates biases that are historically inherited for marginalizing women vis-a-vis men, and also how we are perceived as equal. You rightly pointed out, girls and boys start well in school, they start together. Very often girls outperform boys, but later down the road, because of the fertility aspirations, I want to have children, then you have to make choices of career or looking after the kids. So there is no single answer for equality and parity. You need really to have many things in place so that you can accompany, and this is where we work with gender-responsive family policies, then they equally understand the needs of women and men to be supported, to follow their career path, but also to combine work and life, fertility aspirations. And in emerging Europe, this becomes even more critical, and I wish for the organizers of emerging Europe, next time women are not more visible, but equally visible in the forum, so that because of the demographic shifts, we see more and more pressure on women to outperform motherhood, career, taking care at home. They are very often, the unpaid care is provided by women. So in this sense, the UN, we have, I think in the World Economic Forum, they introduced this, my office helped me, e.g. assess certification, which actually is a global business certification standard for gender equality. So there are already measures.
Sounds like more paperwork. People are going to get resentful.
Not really, because actually this gives you a benchmark to verify where your organization stands vis-a-vis gender presence, ethnicity, nationality, equal pay.
Okay, Marta, let's put some of that to Ivana, because Ivana, you touched upon this idea that women do better academically, in the sense that more women, a higher percentage of women do higher education, then they become less visible. Money helps, right? Doesn't it? Money helps. Zagreb Stock Exchange, is there an equal pay policy, Ivana, within the Zagreb Stock Exchange? And Diana, I'll be asking you that as well. If we could just get Ivana's mic up, because I need to hear this answer.
Just to get a little bit back to what the other ladies on the panel said, I think it's very important to understand that demographics is the important question not only of women as their aspirations to be mother, are many nationalities in Europe are actually being distinguished. I mean, the number of people is decreasing significantly. We miss workforce. So if we want to long-term have our nations, then we definitely need to create the world, and it has to be actually declared by men that women need to somehow get all the support they need in order to have career and have children.
Because so financial support, Ivana, this is yes or no?
Yeah.
Zagreb Stock Exchange,
Yes.
equal pay
Yes.
policy?
It is not a big trend in Croatia to have that, but as I'm a CEO for 12 years, you know, you might bet there is equal pay policy, so it cannot be different. But of course, the difference comes in many situations, and the most important part why it comes because women are actually not being promoted to the higher positions. And they're not going to be promoted if they are not trained. And in order to have them promoted and to be trained, I think we need to declare some sort of quotas. And the soft quotas are already imposed by investors. That's a big trend, ESG investing in the whole world, where the investors are starting to ask questions to the companies, why don't you have compose the board, because they realize that male-dominated boards tend to act more risky in a crisis situation, and they tend to hire and be hazardous a little bit because of the very high bonuses. And this was avoided in the crisis in the more balanced boards. So I think one of the main drivers of this change, besides the quotas, is going to be the soft quotas that are already being imposed by the investors.
I think I'm not going to pick you up on this, but this idea that in Croatia there's not a big trend for equal pay, I'd love to hear, more women, whether that's genuinely true. Visa, Diana, equal pay policy in Visa?
In Visa, we're very much looking into having these same opportunities offered to women and men. So I will reference some facts that so respectively, the pay is very much taken into consideration. But before we go to that, I would maybe reference some interesting facts that would support something that I'm saying. So Visa is a company that keeps focus on gender diversity across all people-related processes, starting from recruitment to career development to compensation planning. And for instance, 3 of 4 clusters heads in CISSAE are led by female country managers. So female and male ratio in our leadership team is 48 to 52. So we have 12 females and 13 males. And overall female-male ratio across the employees inside CISSAE is 55 to 45, so dominated by the women. So this said, I really believe that the company is paying huge attention to the equality in every factors that what we're doing. But in order to, there are many factors behind the wage disparity between women and men. So overall, right, in the world and in Caucasus in particular. And I would start simply with the fact that until recently, there were different levels of education attainment for women and men. So historically, right, and education attainment is a major determination of earning.
But Diana, I'm just going to, because we don't have much time and I didn't want to bring my other panelists in.
Yeah.
A job's a job, right? If you're doing the same job, and Marta, I will be asking about the UN, why wouldn't you? And you've got a representative here. But if a job's a job, you expect to be paid the same. And I think that's where, from Visa's point of view and the Zagreb Stock Exchange, is very powerful for you to feed that back. Marta, UN, equal pay? Equal pay. Excellent, there you go. Thank you. When it comes to some of the points that we've been hearing so far, and again, it's the childcare, the responsibility there. I just wonder, the unseen work that women do, as we touched upon sexual conflict, as we touched upon the physical weakness, the reality of women just not being as physically weak as men, the child support, etc., it fundamentally does detract from a woman's ability to rise to the very top.
It does, but one more word about equal pay. the reason for the difference between equal pay is insufficient equal pay legislation. So once UN will figure out how to introduce this legislation, I hope this will change. Because this is the only actually way to do it. Because of course there is a chance that business will change their attitude, but it will take much longer than the legislative solution. So I'm looking forward to it.
And when it comes, Magdalena, that when that initial moment when you were in that room and you gave us that very powerful story about the men thinking that you were the assistant, I wonder, going back to that time, and I'll let you finish our panel with your thought here, going back to that time, what would you have told yourself now, having this very successful, very visionary, very forward-thinking company, Uvera? What would you have said to that woman in that room then?
Oh, that's a really strong question. To myself or to the guys which were by the table?
Let's do both. Let's do both.
That was the moment when I have gave up. That was the moment when I was leading the startup company for 3 years with this, like, I even bought this PC by myself. I was not earning no money at that time. And I have also the venture capital within the company, the foundation within the company, the shareholders who were, and I was not her shareholder even, but I was really believing, I was really doing it. So they have found the person who's got the vision, who's got the energy, and who's, is able to open all the doors. But at that moment I said no more. Like, the next time I would like to do it by myself on my rules and with the people which really trust me and in which I trust as well. And so that was the story which I remember, and I said at that time that I give up. And at the same time, the negotiation at that time went really well, and they would like to invest in the company and so on. But also, the next day I came back to Poland. I went to the lawyers, to the place, the office. And I saw that there were like only lawyers, the men lawyers. And in the reception desk, there was a beautiful lady who was giving this tea, coffee, whatever, and doing all the paperwork. And I said, oh goodness, that's over. Like, that's the way the men are thinking. I'm not blaming everyone, of course, because it's also connected with the growing up that the women was responsible for giving this tea and for giving this coffee. So like, they have this kind of the paradigm in the head, and that's not their fault. But it's good to let them know and to tell that it's not the way we would like to be treated. And in business, you can go in the other way. For example, if you are leading your business, but if you are, employee within the company and you have no force to change it, that's the situation which we need to change as the people which are within the foundations, within the legislative, within the people who have the power to talk about it. And the quotas, which we were started, are a really good example to show that we should work together. We talk all the time about the inclusion, about the gender freedom, to not divide it, but we as the women are starting from the position that we are underrepresented, and we need to put this button on to get the experience also on the different levels.
Thank you so much. And just on that thought, Magdalena thought that's the moment that I give up. Imagine if she had given up. Her company is now looking at climate change. It's quite remarkable that the kind of level of entrepreneurship that you're doing and the visionary aspect of this particular company. Thank goodness you didn't give up. I think it's all of our responsibilities to talk about this. And I hope I've given you guys something to talk about when you go for your coffee break. Have a look around. Who's serving you? Fascinating aspect. We can make change. The women in the room, Diana, Ivana, thank you so much. Monika, Marta, and Magdalena, thank you so much. And thank you to you guys as well for watching. We're going to have a short break now, which I believe you're going to get some teas and coffees and a chance to catch up and dissect what we've heard so far. Thank you.